Welcome back to Tales of Praxis, everyone. I'm Aaron Suduko, the founder of With a Terrible Fate, your online home and publication for everything to do with the literary study of your favorite video games. We are continuing with our playthrough of Tales of Symphonia. If you love JRPGs, if you love Bandai Namco's work, or just interested in playing through a great game with a great story from the lens of looking into its narrative, this is the place to do that. Excited to be continuing with you today in what I would call the third act of the game. If you're thinking about the first act really as the journey of regeneration that Colette and the Sylvarant gang go on, and then the second act, which we just wrapped up, of them trying to make pacts with all the summoned spirits in an effort to separate the worlds, Sylvarant and Tethe'alla. And now we're into this third adventure of trying to figure out how to save Colette from turning into a Crucius crystal. So that was our focus last time, discovering her sickness, learning about how it apparently has some history in the ancient Carlon War. One of Mythos's companions suffered from it, and so we were able to find a record of a way in which it might be possible to actually save her if we gather the right materials to make a special, I think, kind of add-on to the key crest controlling the Crucius crystal. So we're on a quest to get the materials for that. I had to cheat and look at the synopsis to remember the materials, but we've got Zircon, which we already got from the mine last time. The Mana Leaf Herb, which is what we're headed to Heimdall now to get. And a Mana Fragment, which requires going to Daris Carlon, Crucius's main base. So the gang sagely decided to save that for last. So we got the Zircon. We failed epically at a confrontation with Kuchinawa, with China, but it looks like we might be able to go back to that later. And we were wandering through the Ymir Forest in an effort to get to Heimdall to get the Mana Leaf Herb. And it was in the middle of this journey through the forest that the game seemed to crap out. We got lifted away by a bird and into a screen of never-ending black. But thankfully the save didn't set us back too far, and I got us back to the point of just getting the third flower here that enables those bird travels. So I'm going to pick up navigating the forest where we left off, and hopefully not encounter any more little technical glitches along the way. But hey, that's part of restoring an old school JRPG in a way that retains the original experience, right? You have to have weird glitches that you would never really be able to account for or expect. Oh, it would help if I changed the Sorcerer's Ring back to the Sonic utility of the forest. Hey Chrissy, how you doing? Good to see you back. Stream is also hopefully going to be, I don't want to say professionalized, because hopefully y'all are already enjoying it and the quality is not terrible, I would hope, but you can be the judge of that. But I made some purchases to hopefully upgrade the overall experience and make it more consistent with what you might expect from a stream. So I was hoping everything would be here in time for this broadcast on Monday. But I think it should all be here in time to get set up for the Wednesday broadcast. So hopefully, if you turn in and check things out on Wednesday, the content and narrative experience will be a lot like this, but it will be a little easier to digest from a viewing perspective. So look forward to that. Assuming I can make all of the little technical pieces work together, but cross your fingers and toes on that front. Okay, I think we already hit this boulder from this side. We need to hit it from the other side? I think that's what we did here. Yeah, I did that already.
Ready? Field barrier!
Yeah, I think there's supposed to be something that generates subs pretty easily as a, might not even be a plugin, it might be a core feature. So yeah, I could definitely try adding that. You'll have to give me some feedback. I'm a little worried about over-cluttering the like the UI of the stream, because I don't want there to be like too much there to distract from the actual game. But if subs are something that would seem helpful, we could definitely try that out. I was wondering why my headphones sounded weird, and it's because I forgot to actually turn them on, because they still work passively when I don't like turn on the active noise cancellation. Just everything sounds really weird through them. Okay, now we have the channel in the water. Remember, we have to take advantage of it with these handsome devils of fishes that we see. Well, I need to go somewhere else first. Can we hop over this? Okay, right, but... Got it. Yeah, my hope is that the video quality can catch up with the audio quality. I got a nicer webcam coming and a green screen to be able to mix a little more nicely with the content of the game that's being streamed. So, and Evie's gonna look at me sideways with all of the tech and various production rigs that I'll be lugging into the apartment, but hey, hopefully it'll make the experience a little more palatable. I tweeted about this, but I'm making a commitment that the second companion article in Tales of Praxis, looking at, not Tales of Symphonia, but Tales of the Abyss, will be coming out this week, because I want to do those articles on a weekly basis, and what happened was, as I started thinking about what I wanted to talk about with Tales of the Abyss while it was still fresh in my mind, it kind of very quickly spiraled into what could be like a very large research project, kind of on the order of what I just did with Xenoblade and Wittgenstein, which I honestly didn't feel it in myself to do, and also is just kind of outside the scope of this current series that I'm working on. So I'm going to force myself to be a little more succinct and telegraphic with it, but I'm really excited about it. I think you're going to like it, and then probably going to just spend few weeks after that just diving further into the written side of Symphonia while it's fresh in our heads and we're working on that. Alright, this is where the game crapped out last time, so okay, it worked this time. Thank goodness. I was afraid it would permanently trap us here. Although, did we even need to come here? Maybe this guy has a, one of those things to unlock our memories. Thank you, I'm glad you're excited. Well, especially you, Chrissy, since you've been such an amazing devotee of the stream, which I really appreciate. Please continue to be vocal and engaged with the feedback, because you know you're really the best metric I have for making improvements on this.
Goodbye, worthless enemies.
Boy, Regal just plows through his skills. I feel like he's always running low on TP. Why use your hands when you can be twice as aggressive with your feet? No, we looked at that last time. I'll try to do a better job, like I was trying to do the other time, of really shouting into the mic during combat. But no, I checked the audio settings, and it's just it's one master. That might be something that if we start getting really fancy, I can like try to mix a little better once I'm working, you know, not natively on the PS5, but I'm going to move over to my Mac and run OBS on it, which I have come to understand is like sort of the generic base package of streaming software. So I might be able to make improvements then, but for now, this is what we are stuck with. How have I lost the plot of how to get over to that side? Man, I feel like this forest is more of a maze than it needs to be.
Be careful! Ready? Fire! Cuteness! Don't get in my way! Devastation!
That's what they tell me.
Ready? Healing circle!
It'll have more degrees of freedom and flexibility than this for sure, at least, so small steps.
Help is on the way! Don't get in my way! Run! Don't get in my way! Help is on the way! Spirit seal! Fire seal! Here! Shoot him! Spirit! That was disappointing.
I just hate that the various paths through this forest are so narrow you have to fight all the enemies. Like, I get that it's, you know, good training to level the characters, and even narratively maybe you want to say, well, it's a forest, there's a lot of wildlife, it lends credibility to it that you wouldn't be able to just navigate around all of it. But it certainly makes it harder when you have to solve a puzzle and the various pieces of the puzzle are in far-flung different areas of the forest.
Come, Shadow! Help is on the way! Healing circle!
Goodbye, worthless enemies.
Oh, I did this one already. That's the problem of quitting one of these dungeons midstream, too. I forget what I've already done. I want to get back to that, that way of dropping worms in the water, I think, because that chums the water for the fish, if I remember right. Okay, but those bugs, those ripples are used to move something once it's already in the water, so that's not what we want. Maybe this? Yeah, okay, so we want to move that fruit over to where the kid is by the entrance to Heimdall. Oh, and I think we need to distract the fish so the fish doesn't eat the fruit? Or do the fish help to move it? We'll figure it out.
New foes.
Seal barrier! Fire seal! Shoot 'em! Ready? that's it. I was just getting started.
I feel like there are other JRPGs where you change the equipment of your characters and it doesn't really make that much of an impact in battle in terms of the aesthetics of it. But one thing I've always loved about these Tales games is I really do feel like all the models of especially the different weapons are like sufficiently individual and distinguished from one another that it really makes a fun difference to watch the characters play with very different weapons in battles, especially once you get a cool one or a rare one or something. Yeah, so the little fish are our friends, and the big fish are obstacles. We're slowly remembering, so we need some way of getting this fish away from there. Yeah, okay, so we distract him with that. And then while he's eating, we get the little fish to push the fruit right by him. It's like stealth combat, but what if the stealth were about directing a sumptuous forest fruit away from forest-dwelling fish? Using the power of a magic ring you found on a fake journey to save the world. Typical JRPG stakes, ladies and gentlemen. Run, you fools, run! Must be one tasty bug. That fish is locked in. Right? I love also, like, I don't know if this is just an artifact of the times when Symphonia was made, but the fact that the party doesn't really talk about this at all. Like, they don't have some powwow to discuss, like, well, it looks like we gotta figure out a way to push this fruit to the other side of the forest, but watch out for these fish, because it seems like they really love fruit. I just kind of quietly intuit the way to get to where they're going. In solemn alignment with one another. Although, in fairness, that may also be that the conversation failed to trigger because I didn't actually bother to talk to the kid guarding the gate to Heimdall yet. So I guess we don't technically know why we need this Ymir fruit quite yet. Alright, on to the next screen.
This is ridiculous. Ready? Run! Serpent's opinion! Run! Serpent's opinion! Don't get in my way! Run! Circle! Devastation! Resolution! Serpent's beast! Run! Serpent's opinion! Are you okay?
No, I'm embarrassingly behind on Resident Evil, period. They were just never really a series that I got into. So, I feel like I mentioned on one of the streams, maybe I didn't, Actually, when I was in Boston for PAX, a buddy of mine and another analyst for With a Terrible Fate, Matt McGill, actually got me to try some of Resident Evil 7 for the first time, which was quite the experience. But now, obviously, I'm familiar with Resident Evil 4 because it's one of those landmark games that made a big difference to the medium, but I've actually never played the original. But I don't live under a rock, so I do know that people are losing their minds over the remake, which makes me feel like I need to play it all the more. Okay, see, I'm worried that if I play this one, I'll just immediately get swallowed by a fish. Right? Maybe we just have to time it with that fish. But then what is the fish that's just standing there doing? Like, I don't feel good about that. Well, maybe we'll just wait for this one fish to go by and see if the other one will leave us alone. Maybe? Oh, I didn't know you were going that way! Oh! Even a stop clock is right twice a day. That was pure luck. Yeah, I could probably talk him into doing that. We do have one article that I think is about Resident Evil 4. It was one of our very, very old ones that a former analyst who's no longer with the site named Nate Randall wrote, which is good. He works in game design now, and he had some really thoughtful views on kind of the intersection of gameplay and story. So I can drop a link to that in the VOD afterwards. But yeah, Dan, he wrote about, I think, all of the mainline Silent Hill games for the canon, but he's never touched Resident Evil. He should, though. It's a good suggestion. It sounded also from what little I'd read on Twitter about it that it's yet another good case study of when a game is remade and there are changes from the original. So those are, as you know, I have a lot of fun thinking about those with like Final Fantasy VII Remake and the like. I'm just gonna go talk to this kid now in case not talking to him causes some issues with this quest. And that's why we were doing what we were doing before. Video games. Sometimes you go through those stories out of order. Ah, Lloyd, you were so close. Zelos, what I say doesn't matter. It's what I do. That's my other mortal. It's a trope, isn't it? Butterfly guidance. I feel like... Am I crazy? I feel like that's the way that you get guided in, like the Lost Forest in Ocarina of Time or something, too. Right? I may be confusing it with later sections of this game, too. I think you're encouraged to follow butterflies more than once, as memory serves. It might just be a Tales trope.
It's over.
The woods are alive with the sound of ocarinas. No, I think you're right. I'm gonna have to look up, like, following butterflies in video games, because I think it does come up in this Tales game again and maybe other Tales games, but I feel like it's a broader thing. I may be totally misremembering. Blue butterflies especially, I feel like they're supposed to have some kind of mystical meaning. That would be funny though. It'll be funny if I'm riffing like this and there's literally no instance of it in video games other than Tales of Symphonia, because what that would tell me is, again, talk about those games and stories you just absorb as a kid, like it's taken on a mythos of my own where it's like an archetype in my mind and I just assume that it informs all the other stories in the world. It's my prototype for navigation in video games. Okay. Fish is over there with the fruit. Finally find the right path. Ay, ay, ay. And a blue butterfly, go figure. Blue butterfly, blue fish. Blue is just it's a good color. Sheena, you don't have to rub it in, I'm trying. If the game hadn't crapped out on me halfway through, that would have been a little easier.
We have no choice.
Fire tail's on the way. Healing circle. I am. Ready? Acuteness. Spitfire seal. Spitfire seal. Ready? Field barrier. No way. Do not bother us.
Alright. One very, very wet fruit. Man, that thing we had last time with the screen going black on the game and then it just not coming back, it actually made me weirdly nostalgic for like an experience that I at least have not had happen to me in many years in gaming, but which was definitely part of like my childhood experience in the GameCube era and thereabouts, because I feel like it used to be the case, especially if you were renting games back in the days of Blockbuster, if I want to age myself, or, you know, if you bought a game used or something, or sometimes I feel like even with a new game, where there would be like an issue with the physical disc, and sometimes something would just catch and you wouldn't be able to move past a certain scene. And I remember it really could like grind your gears sometimes when you got a game with multiple discs, like Tales of Symphonia, and then one of the later discs had an issue, so you didn't discover that there was this game-breaking problem with your copy until you had like tens and tens of hours invested in the game. I remember, I think I had that experience with the first copy I had of the original Final Fantasy VII, because I got that used, and I think it wasn't until like the beginning of Disc 2 maybe that I encountered that kind of problem, and I had to like interrupt my entire gaming flow to like, I couldn't even return the game I had at that point because it had been so long since I'd gotten it. So I just had to, I think, you know, spring for a new copy on top of that. Well, a new used copy. And funny enough, frustrating as it was at the time, I do feel like that kind of glitchiness and physical obstacle to the game is part of what makes me nostalgic for old school games like that these days. You don't really have an analog that I can think of in books. Maybe in films with like really old films where you have to count on preservation of the medium in a way that's different in the digital age now. But still not the same as being interrupted right when you're in the thick of a game or a JRPG story. That's 'cause we're from Sylvarant. Nah, the real answer is much more complicated, but the kid doesn't have time for that. Yes, one of the many fun things in the Metal Gear series, in the world of meta. What? A scene with Kratos where we don't get his great Crucius theme, and he's not voiced? Perish the thought. This Act 3 is when we become interested in uncovering the history of the world. Like, oh, suddenly there's this village of the elves that has this past that makes them resent and discriminate against half-elves. And they've got a problem with mythos. And it makes sense because at this point in the story we've been motivated to, actually uncover that history for the sake of the party members we're invested in, because the only way to cure Colette's illness is by going into the past and figuring out how Mythos' party dealt with it in their heyday. Interesting too, because as differently as they're treated in the world, the elves and half-elves in Tethe'alla are both very sequestered to their own little isolated spots. We have Heimdall here for the elves, and then we have the village we visited in the sky earlier, whose name I'm blanking on, but where the half-elves exiled themselves. Exire! How could I forget that? It's like exile, but you change a letter. Oh, we actually have the stuff for a customization. Love it when a plan comes together. Ooh, we can get a couple. See, this is how we can benefit when we actually bother to look at the customization menu for once before just buying from the shop directly. There are ways like that to be economical in these games. I just never approach it with that mindset. And therefore I'm always poor and poorly equipped. Yaksa. It says a picture of Yaksa as though we're supposed to know who or what that is, but I don't remember a mention of Yaksa in the world so far. Other than this card, I guess. I do always reach that inflection point in Tales games, though, despite what I just said about being poor, where it must be something to do with my playstyle, or maybe it's more general, but I feel like for the first 2/3 of the game, I always have no gold, and am spread thin whenever I'm trying to, go shopping for anything. And then after that, it's like, I don't know if, like the characters unlock skills that let them get more gold per battle, or just the gold per enemy ratio goes up or something. But I'm always just magically flush with cash for the rest of the game. And there's no middle ground. One extreme or the other. I see a dog. Oh, but can we get to that dog? And like those experiences, like it's not the game's fault, especially when you're renting it, but it can really like change your relationship with a game or a series. I had the same thing with oh, I forget which Sonic game, but one of the Sonic games for the GameCube. Like, I tried to rent it more than once from my local Blockbuster, see if they had more than one copy, try different things on the disc on my own dime to see if I could, get the scratch out or whatever was causing it. But it would always get, like, 90 minutes in, so just enough to get me hooked, and then it would freeze, and, nothing I could try would possibly save it. And I think a big part of why I didn't get further into Sonic and the many games of that series was because of that. Like, I think it was my second experience with Sonic. I played Sonic Heroes, and then that happened, and I was like, well, okay, I've already invested and lost so many hours to just the first 90 minutes of this game. I'm not going to try other things in the series, which is a stupid argument, but, little kid logic when you're frustrated at something like that. But here we are talking about it, so it clearly left an impression on me, at least. Man, this is a great soundtrack for a town like this, too. But the music all really feels like it comes from the same score, but there's enough variation in it where just little subtle emotional notes where, like, if you're just visiting a town like this for the first time, you don't really know what's going to happen here, you don't understand its history and why they have the issues that they do, but you kind of get it already just by listening to the music. That's a pretty magical and powerful thing, I think. Did I just totally miss the Elder's house? Oh, I think it's in this direction. Oh no, don't say Ionis. That's really close to Ionios. And I'm having acid flashbacks to Xenoblade Chronicles 3. A contested Holy Land. It does, between stuff like that and the Great Tree, it's like Philosopher's Stone mythos of just being able to generate infinite power out of nothing. see the power of that as a fairy tale, especially in worlds that are continually strapped for resources by design. Yeah, absolutely. I think I saw something on Reddit the other day that, like, Bandai Namco just released the majority of the Tales games soundtracks to streaming services, so I'm excited to make that my entire life. You're right, when so much of it just blends together, it's really nice to find the stuff that is set apart. It's one of the things that always bums me out about Miyazaki's games, you know, like Dark Souls and Bloodborne and everything like that, because I think everything that people says about the quality of the soundtrack is true, but so much of that comes out in these intense boss fights where, like, unless you're much better at them than I am, you can't really stop and appreciate the music while you're trying, you know, not to die, taking on, you know, the gargoyles or Gwyn or any number of memorable enemies, but not exactly listening to music conducive enemies. Yeah, and Final Fantasy VII, I mean, obviously that's a case too that's really stood the test of time, because that was one of the things I loved about the remake of it, the way that they really remade the entire experience, including the soundtrack, you know, tying together stuff you would have heard in the original with new variations on that, and altogether new tracks. Really adds a lot of nuance and just added layers to the history of a series as it continues to develop, if it's fortunate enough to have a lot of games and engagement from players and different artists over time, as has been the case with the Final Fantasy VII series. No, you got it, man. It's Angel Effect. Chronic Angelus, that works too. And you know, maybe there's something to that, because I would bet you it's not a coincidence that that's the same reason I pulled those two randomly out of my head of all the, you know, Miyazaki boss soundtracks you could think of. Just burned in my inner mind forever from the number of times I died. Yeah, okay, per se. Well, you just got access to your emotions and inner life, so you have fewer things going on the inside and a better memory for that reason. The goddess's illness. Just like the unicorn said, like 20 hours ago. Thayan Gorge. Willing to help, but not the friendliest fella. A portrait of the Wonder Chef. Nah, that couldn't be a Wonder Chef ruse. The Elder just really appreciates a good home-cooked meal. Goodbye! Yeah, it's interesting. Now I'm just gonna riff on Dark Souls and Miyazaki until someone stops me, because that's on my mind and it's hard to get it off my mind once it's there. But thinking about this idea of music and the role that it plays in games, like, this is maybe unfair because, so I've been playing Wo Long, right, which is Team Ninja, and I really like it. I really liked the Neo games. I think they do really thoughtful things with this, like, magic realism and historical fiction in interesting parts of the world that you don't oftentimes see in video games. So I like the games, and I'm enjoying my time with Wo Long, but I have always felt like the boss fights, especially, they feel more like I don't know if this is the best way to put it, but I would call it almost grindy and arcadey. In comparison to Miyazaki's boss fights that all feel to me very much like stories and set pieces and works of art. And I think part of that, without having like a Wolong or Neo fight in front of me, so I may be being totally unfair, but I can't pick out in my head like particular elements of that soundtrack or think about like the songs that go along with particular bosses in the way that, as we were just saying, is so easy to do for, you know, a Dark Souls or a Sekiro or Bloodborne. I think there are so many schools of thoughts with video game music, and I think it's fine for the soundtrack to just kind of push you along to be willing to try again and again at a difficult mechanical task, as you would oftentimes get in a Dark Souls-like game. But I think Dark Souls itself really goes above and beyond with like weaving that music into the meaning of the boss in the broader context of the story in a way that doesn't just happen by accident. He said southeast. I think he said east. Well, let's say he said east. Yeah, this looks right. But not before we go over here and grab these skit conversations. I was talking about the heart-to-hearts in Xenoblade Chronicles when I lectured at PAX East a couple weeks ago now. I guess it's already been a couple weeks. But these oftentimes feel to me the same way the heart-to-hearts do, where maybe the right answer is obvious to some of you if you have more like JRPG emotional intelligence than I do, but I feel like I'm often guessing at what like the right answer is, so I oftentimes just default to my gut instead, which might be the point of how they were designed. I have never played Dear Esther. Actually, I don't... Well, maybe I've heard of that at one point or another, but I can't even really firmly place which game that is in my head. So I will definitely have to check that out. We'll have to make a running list of game wrecks as the stream continues, so we don't lose track of them. Yeah, Sheena, I well up with tears when I remember the past too. It's a thing. We learn to live with it. Okay, everybody's gone to the Rapture I did play some of. I have a memory of it being thoughtfully composed. Not really my speed for a game, but I could appreciate the work that went into it. We're getting all kinds of conversations, folks. See, it's all the more, I think, kind of nuanced to think about Zelos precisely because his base level is, you know, this very superficial philanderer and pervert and everything, because, like, you think he's sort of a throwaway joke character, but then he has those incisive moments of, like, real depth in thinking about human nature, like he was talking about in that skit. And, that kind of then makes you wonder, like, oh, okay, well, if this guy does have these layers, then is he putting up a front? Like, what is the relationship between that and the more status quo of how he presents himself? Like their soundtracks that really pump you up, is that what you're saying? Yeah, I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed to out myself because I feel like this is a gap in my gaming history, but I've actually never played any of the Doom games, which I really have no excuse for because they are such a big part of gaming history at this point, but they just never really appealed to me. Yeah, it's almost like they wanted us to have this exact conversation that we had about cellos right before we walked into this. Sometimes the timing works out. The education system in Sylvarant leaves a little to be desired. It's literally just Rain. She's doing her best. She's woefully underfunded. I mean, we gotta know. Hey, I mean, that's a great endorsement in my book. And a testament to what we were saying about how much music can affect the lived experience of the decisions you make in a game and the meaning you take from it. So I love to hear that you were drawn in by the music. I wonder if there was a game where I was ever really drawn in by the music, like that was the thing that made me keep playing. Yeah, fair enough. I've heard the best things about Eternal as well. I kind of feel that way about Kingdom Hearts, actually. I mean, I was going to play it anyway because I found it at a point in my life where I felt like I just needed to familiarize myself with it, and it had interested me for a long time. But I think the thing that really hooked me was simple and clean right off the bat. I mean, say what you will about Kingdom Hearts, but what a powerful introduction to really the whole conceit of the series, just in that what is really just a music video. And that relationship with the music definitely was consistent with me throughout the games. Alright, this will be the last one of these we go to, and then we'll go back to the gorge. Because it's all just like ambient music. Do people not call that music in Breath of the Wild? Yeah, I get what you mean. That's frustrating to me too. It's like, yes, it is a banger. Thank you. Look, it's become so hip, I think, to rag on Kingdom Hearts, but Kingdom Hearts does a lot of stuff deeply right. And the music, I think, is part and parcel of that. I'm having trouble deciding this here. But yes, for Breath of the Wild, I mean, I think there's something right in terms of, like, there's a sense in which its soundtrack is different than something that has, I think, more clearly defined and sequestered, like, songs for, you know, particular battles or certain story beats, because Breath of the Wild soundtrack doesn't work like that, right? But of course it's scored, and so thoughtfully scored, to reflect the kind of world and story that it is. Which is really the same desideratum that we've been talking about with other games. Oh no, I picked the wrong one. I shut down the conversation. See, and then I feel like a jerk because I hurt Perseia's feelings. And that poor girl has been through enough. Yeah, and I mean, by our earlier criterion, like, the Guardians theme, you say that, and I can hear the song in my head, right? So clearly there's music, and it's music that's more memorable than some of the other games we've been talking about, so it passes the test. Yeah, load it up, exactly. Oh, yes. If I were playing this by myself and being more anal about getting all of the outcomes that I want, you're right, I probably would load up an old save. But that's not the spirit of this stream. We're trying to live in the moment. We can do it. This is interesting too. So notice, in in two separate skits, Zelos basically gave opposite sides of a pretty thoughtful thesis about the origins of discrimination, right? Because in the earlier skit, he was talking about the discrimination that the elves have against half-elves, saying, well, you know, it's probably all the more acute for them because they see similarities between themselves and the half-elves, so it's the sameness. And then here in the skit that we just had, he was talking about, oh, well, we fear things that are different than us. So put those together, and I think it's kind of a more trenchant than you would expect, at least, commentary on this idea that, like, discrimination comes about precisely because we see something that is uncanny in the sense of being familiar yet different, which is, again, at the very minimum, more than you would expect from Zelos. Hey, listen, at least you worked through all of the cooking segments. I embarrassingly started a playthrough of Persona 5 and put it down. In my defense, that's not to do with the game, nor with my taste in the game. It was purely an artifact of the fact that I started the game when I was seeing a girl, and then we played it together, and then she and I split up. And so it's... Do you ever have games like that where, like, you're playing it with someone, and then there's no longer an opportunity for you to play it with that person, and so it really feels like your whole mode of engagement with it has changed? It can be hard to keep going on the same file, so I really felt for that reason like I need to just start it over, but that does feel like quite the undertaking and a little bit of a chore. Yeah, it does feel like that uncanny feeling, right? Like you would get from like an iRobot or Ex Machina, that particular breed of sci-fi. Alright, I have vivid memories of this dungeon and what we learn on the other side of it, so we are getting into the story now. Buckle up. Hey, we're doing the companion article series, so maybe this is a good topic, thinking about the relationship between the Uncanny Valley and persecution, as Tales of Symphonia presents it. That'd be fun to talk about. Yeah, so you get it. And it's all the harder, too, I think, when you appreciate, like, this is, like, a really high-quality game, and it's the kind of game that I would appreciate, so you want to be able to play it and get into it, but it's, once it's colored with that initial context, it can be hard to recolor it with something else. Zelos has spent all of his insightful comment points for this stream session, so he's going to recede back into the superficial pervert and chauvinist role now. The duality of Zelos. Just because it's become part of, for want of a better term, like your love language, like it's more about an expression of the relationship than the game itself. Is that what you mean? You know.
I don't care for that.
Although I will say, honestly, sometimes, like, depending on the relationship, it can be really cathartic to make, like, a new memory with a game that you played with someone, and to kind of overwrite that with a new emotional context. Like, it's hard work, like processing a relationship in real life, but if you actually do the work, it can be just as cathartic as really any other forms of therapeutic processing, I think.
That's it? I was just getting started.
Like, I'll tell you, my favorite personal example of that is... We have to change the sorcerer's ring function somewhere. My favorite personal example is there's this great game called Maquette by, I think, Annapurna. And if you haven't heard of it or played it, you should. I wrote about it a while ago in an article, which I can try to remember to link in the VOD. But it's basically it's a game about the aftermath of a relationship and sort of both members of the relationship looking at it through each other's eyes. It's a really smart game and thoughtful, and spends a lot of time thinking about how a relationship falls apart. And so I played that first game while I was seeing someone, and our relationship was kind of like on its tail end, so it was actually like a really depressing and hard game to play. But then I revisited it after the relationship had ended, and I was like in the healing process, and going through that same game with those same themes and having played it before with her, like it really, like it helped me to sort of see myself and the relationship in a new light. And I think that's the kind of processing that you can only really get in an interactive story like a video game. So go video games. I know you never expected to hear me say that, but I endorse video games. Who would have guessed? I've heard amazing things about Gone Home. One of the analysts on With a Terrible Fate wrote a really thoughtful article about basically the way that exploration works in the game and why it's more meaningful and interesting in a story way than many open worlds in bigger games. So I really wanted to play it, and based on my understanding of the story, I'm so glad I was able to do that for you. It certainly seems like the kind of story that is right for that kind of deep emotional processing. I think that's one of the things that, like, people who game nowadays understand that video games are so great for really adult things like emotional processing and working through, like, how you relate to the world. But that's something that I wish could become just more popularly known, because I think, really sadly, you go outside the sphere of people who are gamers, and society in general still thinks of video games as like Fortnite and combat sims, and, you know, maybe if they're being generous, like really long and complicated Lord of the Rings style stories, sort of like, I don't know, something we might be doing here. But people, I think, are less engaged and aware of their capacity to really do everything for us that thoughtful literature can, and more, in terms of being interactive and helping us to reflect on the content of our own actions and decision making. So I know the world in general will continue to come around, but we definitely still have some work to do on that. Yeah, it's a good ingredient, but shouldn't the party maybe remember the conversation we had about feeding the plants, too? A little absent-minded. Well, we got there eventually. I also remember this dungeon as one of the ones that was really hard for me to navigate as a kid, so I'm hoping coming back to it with fresh adult eyes that are battle-hardened by many, many JRPGs and puzzles, it'll be a little easier.
Not much of a specimen. Messed up. Ready? Field barrier.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's one of the things that I talked about really early on in this stream with Zelda Symphonia. This was actually the game that... boy, by the way, I know we forgot about status effects, but thank God this dungeon is here to remind us about, like, every single one of them at the same time. But what I was going to say was, this was the game that led me to discover online walkthroughs of games. Because when I was a kid, the first time you go to the Lezareno mines, the mine where we get the inhibitor ore for Presea's Key Crest, like that puzzle of figuring out how to use the EX gems to run fast enough to like outrun the boulder and get further into the mine. For the life of me, I couldn't figure out how to do that. And so I was stuck and not able to advance the game for literally, I think, months, until I just had this like organic thought that a kid would never have nowadays because the environment is so different. But back then, in like the early to mid 2000s, when internet gaming culture was really just coming to the fore, I had the thought of like, oh, maybe people have written online about how to get past this. And that was the only way I was able to find GameFAQs.com and a really well-written guide on Tales of Symphonia that showed me how to move on with the game. So I know Chrissy knows this, but if you see me looking down on my phone, it's just because with the less than optimal PS5 streaming setup I have right now, I have to look at the stream manager on my phone in order to see the longer messages. So it's hopefully on Wednesday this will all be a distant memory and the engagement system will be much better, so stay tuned. Yeah, it's funny because thank you for sharing your experience with Borderlands. I think we all have friends like that. It's such a double-edged sword to me because one of the things that I love most about video games being this interactive medium where you can play them in so many different ways is I've learned a lot about my friends over the years by sharing my favorite games with them and having them play through it and learning like how they played it and what they found important versus what I did. Like I actually, boy, there are so many references that I'll have to try to remember to throw in the description of the blog for this. But another one that's on With a Terrible Fate is I gave a speech in college about my experience with Nier Gestalt, the one that came before Nier Automata. But I discovered that game when it was still pretty niche. Not trying to say I'm a hipster, but that was one that I was ahead of the curve on. I am happy to own. And I shared my copy of it, my personal copy of it, with two friends of mine. Dan Hughes, who is still my best friend, I would say, and who is a contributor to With a Terrible Fate, and Nate, the former contributor I was talking about earlier. And I loved seeing them, their personalities shine through and what they focused on in the game versus what was important to me in the game. But then also, like you were saying with Borderlands, I think there is a risk where if they see a video game as something that's more of like a chore or something to get done or even to, metagame and min-max in, if it's a game that means a lot to you personally and you're trying to almost like enjoy it with them and share a certain part of yourself or your personality with them, it can be really like demoralizing and a letdown to you in a way that sort of colors the game and maybe even colors your relationship with that person. I mean, I think I've lost some relationships, or at least depth to some of my relationships over time, exactly through that experience of co-oping things with people. We found a devil's arm. Go team. The real test is going to be at the end of this, will Aaron remember all of the other locations so we can do the Nebulum quest all the way through. Oh yeah, definitely, and I think accessibility is a deeply important conversation that's only tangentially related. You're right, it's a different matter. Oh, and I have to imagine, yeah, I mean, maybe you would have some really interesting insights to bear on that, because if you have a particular relationship with someone who is like executing the mechanics of a game for you, I imagine that would just make it all the more complicated to make sense of the game without thinking about your relationship with them, or vice versa. Right? Has that been your experience with it? I don't think we can get on this air current from here. I think we have to go around. That's great. That's awesome. I'm glad it's been a positive thing for you. Oh, I missed it. And now? Oh my god. You gotta be kidding me. Alright, let's try now. Ah, okay. Third time's the charm. I think that was the third time. One of my biggest disappointments in the way that games have developed in the last like 5-7 years is moving away from couch co-op, where it just prioritizes online play and oftentimes doesn't even let you do split screen. Because I'm the exact same way. I bonded in so many ways with so many different groups of important people in my life over a good couch co-op game. And I'll tell you, the experience of couch co-oping Tales of Symphonia on stream with my friend Araceli a few weeks ago, that was the first time I'd done anything like that in years, just because they don't make games like that anymore. And it made me realize just how much I lost when the zeitgeist moved away from that. Wow, okay, some of the best music you've ever experienced. That is reason enough for me to put both of those series on my list. I'm embarrassed to say that I haven't played either, although I've heard of Valkyrie Profile. Except I couldn't tell you anything about it besides its name. Does the rest of the game live up to the standard that the music sets? Is it good storytelling?
Let's get rid of him quickly. No, annoying. Help is on the way.
Game over.
From the dark abyss. Devastation. I summon thee. Come, Shadow.
You'll love to see it.
Ready? Acuteness.
Well, that's a sliding scale, though, right? I mean, if we're talking JRPGs, I assume I think it's a JRPG, right? Like, I feel like being willing to do a certain level of homework and putting together the pieces is, for better or worse, table stakes. Like, I can't tell you how much like Charlie Day conspiracy theory boarding stuff I had to do just to keep the plot of the 3 Xenoblade Chronicles games in my head for the lecture that I gave on it. It's like, you could play through these games back to back and over again, and still, it's just like there's too much to the plot and world to hold it all in your head at once. Ooh, but I'm kind of bullish right now on that PS1 archaic difficulty you're talking about. Because, like, even going back to something like this, which is later, right? So, like, even this will hold your hand more than that era that you're talking about. But going through this again has made me acutely aware of just how much modern game design has pushed towards, like, making things, frankly, so you can just tune out as you're going through the story and not even have to think about where you're going next. And I do feel like there's a special kind of, like, insight you get from the active engagement of needing to figure out what do I do next in a story that you don't get in games these days. When I started, I think it was Final Fantasy 5 or 6 or something, I spent probably the better part of like 30 or 40 minutes just trying to figure out how to like get out of a town and progress to the next stage. And honestly, that was like more enjoyable to me in many ways than a lot of more modern games. Yeah, and I'll tell you, Chrissy, even for not having finished Persona 5, like, that battle theme, that music lives rent-free in my head every day of the week, so that's a testament to the composition. Shall we all, in laggy stream unison, sing it? We'll never see it coming! And that's hopefully the only time you'll get my falsetto on stream. Oh, God. I think I felt more at home in the Shadow impression I was doing a couple streams ago.
Ready? Play!
That was pathetic.
This is when we need to start thinking critically about the right combination of these plants to use. I think we want to bring to life the one on the right cliff over there. So I think we need to go back over there. Wow, best gameplay-based storytelling. Now you're speaking my language. Oh my goodness. I die for great gameplay-based storytelling. Actually, I've been teasing, but for the benefit of everyone on stream, I'm pretty confident now, and you're speaking of sequels, so this is a great segue in two ways. I'm pretty confident I'm going to go into the stream of the Tales of Symphonia sequel after this, Dawn of the New World, which is also a direct sequel. And it's funny because that's one of those games where, as I remember it and think about my impressions of it at the time, I actually had a pretty negative response to it. I don't remember enjoying it that much, and yet, as I've grown up and thought about it more, especially in terms of some of the stuff that it's done with gameplay-based storytelling, it's really stuck out in my mind in a way that, consistent with the theme we're talking about, a lot more recent games have kind of failed to meet the standard, so I'm really excited and interested in going back to it through fresh eyes right after this playthrough.
Ready? Purify!
Well, those series are definitely both on my list now, so you have my eternal gratitude for that. I think we do this one too. Maybe? Yes, I think the combination of those three pushes you up to the next stage. Where the slug was dutifully waiting for us for eons, much like Homer's forlorn dog in the Odyssey. Wow, Odysseus is not Homer's. I'm confusing protagonist with author. The JRPGs are blending the metaphysics of story in my head too much. Send help!
Do not bother us.
I've been thinking about this a lot with Tales of the Abyss too, because one of the many interesting things about that game is it features a protagonist whom you are very clearly not supposed to like for the first act of the game. And so as you're playing through it, you sort of intentionally have a bad time with the game where you're not really enjoying the story, but that's just because of the bigger point of the story. And I think for many people, myself included, that's part of what makes Tales of the Abyss an especially memorable entry in the Tales series. And I do think, like, modern games have a lot of great storytelling. I don't want to rag on them. You know, I'll play and love new games every year, so that's not what I'm saying. But I do think that when we focus so much on quality of life and making stories digestible, you do lose that kind of special experience of having difficulty with a story and not always liking it, but it being much more memorable and impactful on you for that reason, like you're saying with Breath of Fire 3. Ooh, I love storylines like that. That's a little bit like, not exactly, but sort of the same structure as Tales of Graces also. Has a similar, like, child to adulthood narrative. Chrissy's probably going to give me crap on that, because I keep finding ways to bring up Tales of Graces, which she did not get all the way through. But this is the point of conversations like this. It's never too late to give a game a second chance through fresh eyes. That is the whole lesson of this particular broadcast, I feel. Okay, so I think we need another angle now to get up to this one. Because it's not gonna... we can't jump on it from down here, right? I think we have to be launched from underneath it. I'm gonna try one more time, but I think that's right. Yeah, no, I think we need to use the bigger flowers underneath. Hey, don't threaten me with a good time. Well, it's funny, because actually I keep planning to start another one just on my own personal time off stream, because I really do want to work through most of the series and reflect on it in these articles and just this analytical experience that we're going through together. But every time I think of one to start on my own in the background to the Tales of Symphonia stream, then I find myself thinking like, well, but maybe I'm going to want to stream that after this. I don't know. But I think the other lesson that we're taking from this is you can never replay these games enough if you really want to try to understand them. And so maybe I'll start one knowing full well that we can stream it together after the fact too. Man, is that a Colette emoji? I can't totally tell what that is, but that looks like a freaking Colette emoji. I'm digging that if you found a way to get those into the stream. Oh no, this is where the plants get complicated. Alright everyone, we're into where the puzzle solving hurt my head as a kid, so let's see if we can get through it now as grown-ups. We could be adults about this. Oh, don't get me started on Prey. One of my favorite games. I am constantly wanting to revisit and talk about that more than I have. So we could just have a coup and turn this whole stream into a Prey stream if we're not careful. Talk about smart games that did not get the credit that they really deserved. I mean, Prey was well received, but for everything it did, it should have gotten way more popular acknowledgement than it did. I think people are slowly getting around to it though, like playing it when they maybe didn't play it right when it came out and are like, oh, no one told me that this game is insanely thoughtful and challenging. No one except for us, but no one listens to us. I don't know what the mic is or isn't picking up also, but if you hear sounds of quiet yet anxious frustration in the background, my beloved corgi, Evie, has put her bone under the couch because she desperately wants to play with me because she knows my attention is elsewhere and she freaking hates it. So I apologize on her behalf if you can hear that. I think this is going to do nothing, and then we need to turn one of the other, yeah. So we need to turn the two crosswinds off in order to get it done, I think. We are the ultimate arbiters of the plant life cycle. You live and die because we allow it. I don't know if we'll be able to climb back up this one if we go down. Maybe we'll be able to make it work just with the one. Let's try it. Nope. I was so wrong. Alright, well, let's see. Can we... Okay, we can go back up this. I thought the incline might be a little too steep, but as I think about it, this isn't really the kind of game where those physics come into the gameplay. Y'all got me confused with all the talk about Breath of the Wild, where you have to think about things like world navigation in those more realistic terms. Son of a bitch. I'll get this timing right the first time, like exactly once by the time we leave this area. That was the one time. It's never gonna happen again. Alright, now I jinxed myself, but in a good way. Maybe we're actually gonna get into a rhythm with them. There's something. Oh, there's something over there. Oh, and I lost. Wow. All right. Take a deep breath, everyone. I think it's slightly faster than the other ones. That's what's messing me up. There we go. I thought that was going to catch the updraft? I guess not. It looks like it should. Oh, we can go this way then. Not another mimic. Okay, I hope we're equipped for this. I still have shell shock from losing on stream on my first stream ever to the first mimic in the game. But hopefully we learned a thing or two since then.
Must be huge. Be careful. Ready? Run! Cuteness. Are you all ready? No. Help is on the way. Healing circle. Serpent seal. Pinion. Rod seal. Ready? Field barrier. I got it.
Just has such high defense, it takes forever to actually kill.
Healing circle.
I think I'm gonna let this be.
See ya.
Not really interested in fighting the fake traumatic chest for an hour.
We have no choice.
Are you okay? First fire seal. Devastating. Acuteness. Guardian seal. Fire beast. That's it? I was just getting started.
Yeah, speaking of Tales games and my not-so-secret obsession with them, I don't think I mentioned this on the stream, but one of my pickups that I'm really proud of at PAX East, because of course when you go to a con, you don't just lecture, you also go shopping and spend way too much money. And I found a copy in really good condition of the original Tales of Destiny, which you talk about OG PlayStation games. I was talking to it. Hilarious. Anyway, yes, so that's one that I actually haven't played, although I have a very nice Japanese like collector's edition box of I think the first two that I got when I was visiting my friend Dan in Tokyo a few years ago. But of course I couldn't play that because I'm a neophyte who doesn't speak the language. So I'm excited to actually play through that at some point. Although I don't know, playing an old school Tales game for the first time on stream, that might be a little much even for me. So we'll see if I let you into my my first time experience with that or not. Yeah, right. That's the easiest way to learn. Come on. I'll be perfectly equipped to go live in Japan and have normal conversations about things like killing God and magi technology and complicated love triangles with spiky-haired individuals. That's the majority of day-to-day conversation, right?
Get ready.
Field barrier!
Eagle time.
Help is on the way. Healing circle! Ready?
That was pathetic.
You know, I like to think or hope that we all have similar jank experiences with finding anime on sketch websites in our deep or maybe not so deep past. Either that or we're both weirdos, in which case, hey, at least you're not alone, audience of two, right? Yeah, it is fun. I mean, that's one of the things I love so much about video games, though, right? It's like when you find something that pulls you in so much, like, just lean into it and enjoy that. And then when it's something like a video game that also is built so much on these like gameplay loops that encourage you to basically train yourself to learn how to keep going, right? I mean, I do think a lot of that is translatable into like just focus and dedication in your life more broadly. I learned a lot about work ethics from video games. And no one can tell me otherwise. They're the healthiest thing in the world. All right, we do need to figure out how to get out of here, though.
Not much of a specimen. Ready?
Eagle fall.
Amen! I'll give a +1 to that any day. Yep. I'm sad that it's become so trite and expected to compare Dark Souls to Camus' The Myth of Sisyphus, because, oh wow, that is, yeah, probably not what you were looking for in that case. Or, well, to each his or her own, but probably not what you were looking for. But yeah, with Dark Souls, in all seriousness, I really feel like, look, if you stop and think about what Camus was really saying and trying to achieve with the Myth of Sisyphus, like, I'll bet if that dude were alive today, I keep wanting there to be a way out of the cavern up there. If he were alive today, like, he would be mad at Miyazaki for making his point better than he did back in the day with all the existentialists and absurdists. Because I really do think, like, that willingness and insistence on persevering and striving when everything feels meaningless, like, it's sad, but that does capture so much of like the human condition and what you need to be able to steel yourself to do. And you're, I mean, there's no better engine for teaching you how to do that than Dark Souls. All right, now I'm going to pay like 2 cranks more attention to this so we can actually get through this area. So this is not the way. All right, we're starting here, and I know we came out the bottom way, so maybe I'll look on the left side again. Hey, I mean, on the sliding scale of strangeness of time travel, and especially when we're already thinking in terms of JRPGs, that is not the strangest goal, nor the most ambitious. But I think there would be a lot to be gained from that. I mean, I'm biased because I've, like, you know, directly applied the work of, what, at least 3 philosophers to very specific JRPGs, Plato and Leibniz and Wittgenstein. So I like to think that they would get something out of playing those games and talking about them. But I mean, it's all just like, it's intertextuality found across time and space, right? I mean, I think if you're able to read and engage with those philosophical works, as many game designers have, right, and then play the games that might have been, you know, either directly or indirectly influenced by those same works. I mean, that's how we learn, and that's how we can sort of create this extended philosophical corpus, whether or not those philosophers were fortunate enough to be alive at the time that these games were being spun. I really think I learned more about at least Leibniz from JRPGs than I did from Leibniz himself. So I feel like you get this interactive representation of their ideas, and of course, like, by doing, you're going to learn them more than just reading the text as such. Wow, do you remember any of that? I'm trying to even, like, process what that would look like. Like, is the hunter's dream and the nightmare supposed to be like the noumenal world, and we're going insane because we're stretching beyond the limits of rationality or something? That even from me, and this is saying something coming from me, like, something like that would seem like a reach to me, but maybe they had a different line of attack with it. By the way, if anyone's keeping score, we finally made it out of the wind plants. This is the end of this, and it was definitely a faster process than for little kid Aaron. Let's put it that way. Little kid being probably like 8 years old, so I should hope that if I've been living life at least decently for the last 20 years, I would have increased capacity in something like basic JRPG puzzle solving. Oh, are we not actually out? Oh, that's so funny. I totally jumped the gun. I remembered that as the run-up to the storyteller's house. Kantian is... So, philosophers just do this thing where they attach, like, ians to their name. So, Kantian is just, like, ever relating to the, like, school of philosophy that was propagated by Immanuel Kant. And so if you've ever heard of, like, the categorical imperative, that's kind of the big thing Kant's known for these days, which is his ethics. He was one of those philosophers who came to philosophy at a time where, like, you had these ambitious old white dudes, if we're being honest, for the most part. Although there are, interestingly, a lot of thinkers, like female philosophers and underrepresented philosophers, who were doing philosophy back then and are just now starting to get recognized, which is really cool to see. But the ones whose name you know are usually, you know, old white dudes of privilege who had the time and resources to be able to just think about every facet of existence in the world. And so Kant is kind of like the paragon example of this, because he famously, like, never really left, I think in his lifetime, the little German town where he was born, and he would habitually take these same walking routes throughout the town, like every day of his life. The nuns at the church, I think, said they could, like, set the clocks of the monastery to his walks. That's how punctual he was. Okay, so we were almost out. We just, I jumped the gun by a very small amount. But yeah, so Kant basically sort of redefined the tide of modern Western philosophy through sort of his metaphysics and view of, like, basically what he called another Copernican revolution in terms of relocating, like, what the center of the universe was. Like, how Copernicus said, no, the Earth isn't the center of the universe. It actually revolves around the sun. And Kant's Copernican revolution was sort of almost the reverse of that, in terms of putting humans and human action back at the center of philosophy, in terms of basically imposing limitations on the world based on how we can experience it, what we have access to, and kind of most interestingly, at least to philosophers like me, the idea of what rationality consists in and what humans are able to accomplish by acting rationally. He thought, actually, among many other things, that the ability of a human to act rationally was what like free will consisted in, and what made it possible for humans to be free in a way that is not otherwise available to anyone in the world, which also then ends up being what has ethics come to, this idea that basically we are required to act in certain ways according to ethics because those are the only ways in which we can act as rational human beings. Otherwise, we're not basically doing justice to the structure of what it is to act. So that's my unprepared and unrehearsed précis of Immanuel Kant in a nutshell. But yes, he is one of those philosophers where there is more literature on him, besides even just the works that he wrote himself, than you could read in several lifetimes. So as deep down that hole as you want to go, people will support you in going in that direction. I love Kant. I've said for a long time, and I think this is still true, broadly speaking, that I'm a Kantian in terms of my ethics. Like, I think he was broadly right in terms of what it means to be morally obligated to oneself and the world and one another. All right, we're gonna have to switch gears now because we're gonna get a whole lot of lore and information advancing the story dropped on us. So let's get engaged and dialed in for that, because this is going to be one of those things that sets up the next act of the story, and it'll be interesting to gauge how much of it you expected based on the story and stream so far versus what was more of a surprise to you, if anything. Is this a wonder ship? Even in a plot central place such as this, there's no stopping this bastard. He makes me want to get more creative in my real kitchen. I know how to cook like 3 things, and I just have them rolling on repeat. Alright, everyone strapped in? Here we go. Man, I might have jumped the gun again. I'm gonna have to stop calling things in this story. I thought he was gonna do the storyteller thing and tell us the story right then. It looks like we have to get that sweet herb first. You can unbuckle your seatbelts if you are strapped in. This next part does not require that level of engagement. Let me get the herb, and then we'll get dialed back in. Alright. I think we just need to turn on the flower on the other side to cancel this one out, and then we should drop to that very conspicuous cave right there. Oh! Never mind! Boy, that's not what I was trying to do. Yeah, seriously, right? It really is a trope of the genre, isn't it? You can always count on 1 or 2. Man, I will say one sort of evolution in game design, or just like the way that Tales of Arise treated quality of life relative to something older like this, is I really felt like its field skill system sort of compressed a lot of what the earlier games like Symphonia were trying to do with the Sorcerer's Ring, and just gave you a lot of that variety in terms of different ways to like engage with the ecosystem of the overworld, or change different parts of the topology to get to new places, like get all that diversity in navigation without kind of the operational hassle of managing the Sorcerer's Ring and all its different abilities. Like, this dungeon is definitely, there's a reason I remember it as such a pain. We fell to the bottom of the entire area, and I think it expected you to do that. Like, I don't think I went out of my way to make that error. Yeah, seriously. Oh man, don't get me started on anything to do with Zelda or water either. I am one of those old school Zelda gamers who will shake his fist angrily at water temples and everything surrounding them to this day. It's just like, if it's that hard to implement, just don't do it. Unless you're really trying to tell a story about just like overcoming a world that is cruel and unfair in the way that the hero is expected to engage with it. And there are games like that that I have played and would play, but I do not believe that Zelda is the kind of game trying to tell that story.
Do not bother us.
Yeah, and you know, that's the magic of that temple. And that's what makes me think in part that they had to be deliberate about trying to torment people, because that is such a constant element of every Zelda player's experience. Like, people go through the water temple in different ways in Ocarina of Time. They will, you know, encounter rooms and get different orders of keys, but they'll always end up one damn small key short, and it will torment them for like at least 2 hours. And probably 2 weeks if they're a poor kid trying to figure this out for the first time and haven't played games before, and that experience that was so common back when Ocarina of Time was a newer game.
I was just getting started.
I do wonder nowadays, as it is like embarrassingly becoming a retro game, right? Like, I wonder if kids will experience it the same way when they decide, like, as older, more experienced gamers to play it for the first time, because I feel like, for me, part of what made Ocarina of Time such a seminal game was that I was really, like, learning these things we're talking about like how to navigate a dungeon and how to figure out what to do next in the story of a video game for the first time. If you already have more, like, background experience in how to work a game, it doesn't really feel like it's the same thing. Yeah, I definitely have had an acid flashback or two over the years to the Big Oron Sword quest. Oh my god, just the time limits on it. I always feel like the time limits on those early Zelda games are, like, designed to take years off your life from the anxiety that they induce in you. There's never enough time. Of course, my entire outlook on games and storytelling was also shaped by Majora's Mask, which, I mean, talk about torment over time limits, so I probably have a bit of a biased perspective. There we go. Okay, so it's on this side of the waterfall. There should be a left-facing flower that that we need to activate, if I'm tracking this right. Oh, is that a hot take? I mean, you won't find any fight in that from me on this stream, at least. Twilight Princess has been my favorite, I think, since the time that I played it. And yeah, you might know better than I. I don't really keep up with the broader culture in terms of which are popular. I'm a bad game philosopher that way. No, but I'm crazy for Twilight Princess. I think Majora's Mask for me will always be sort of the most nuanced and probative and challenging in terms of its storytelling, but in terms of just like my favorite and the one that is most beloved for me, it'll always be Twilight Princess. My view on it is I think it does a really good job of taking like the really classic hero's journey that you get in Ocarina of Time, but it layers that in with the distinctive dark tone that is only possible because of Majora's Mask. So it's like, I think, a perfect synthesis of those two games, which is only fitting for it like coming right after them in the timeline. Yeah, I love it to death. Yeah, actually, as I read your message after saying that, I can see someone hearing what I just said as, oh, it's edgy Ocarina of Time, but I think if you're paying attention in the Zelda series and the way that it builds upon its storytelling and just the way that a good narrative series does, like that should be the kind of narrative growth and like intertextual conversation that you're looking for. It shouldn't be like a cop-out or something to feel like you have to apologize for. Is this what we were looking for? It was off and now it's on. No, this just takes us back to the cave. Oh, so we get to go through the cave one more time. Excellent. And that slug is so damn fast for some reason. I'm amazed we're already level 55. Like, I have a feeling there's a significant amount of this game left to go. But also I have it in my head that usually the main stories of a Tales game cap out at around level 60. I'll have to keep an eye on that. Yeah, I saw that people are talking about that again, since I guess the weapons have the same system, or are going to have the same system in Tears of the Kingdom. You know, I think I've gotten used to it, just by virtue of playing as many hours as everyone plays in Breath of the Wild. I'll say it's not something that I love, even within the context of the Zelda ecosystem and the story that it's trying to tell, right? Because I feel like so much of their hero's journey, like the hero of courage, that is acquiring the Master Sword, proving yourself as this hero who then has this ability to defeat Hero. And so, honestly, like, I would have been fine with the durability system in terms of weapons in general, from a storytelling perspective, if they had just like made the Master Sword like the proper Master Sword in terms of just being this permanent, perfect thing that slays evil once you finally get it, and just make it a really hard adventure to get it, right? But for it to also have, because remind me, but I have the right memory of this, right? That even once you get the Master Sword, it's like you always have it, but it has some kind of durability proxy where it like has a certain number of swings or uses before it has to recharge. Am I remembering that right? Yeah, that's exactly right. And so that was really frustrating to me, where it's like, okay, now I feel like you're more committed to just like this system of durability that really doesn't have an antecedent place in the narrative, rather than, you know, creating a new world that is in service of the same themes that you've always been probing in the stories of Zelda over the years. That's my narrative take on it. And then just the more frustrating and mundane side of it is I am absolute piss at inventory management. And so having to like keep track of, oh, these are good weapons that I want to save for battles I care about. So that'll, you know, take up a certain number of blocks in my inventory, and then these are the disposable weapons that I can use for just wandering around the world. That was like a lot of mental overhead that for me was not really constitutive of like the kind of gaming experience that I typically enjoy in a Zelda game, especially where I want to just focus on like guiding the hero's journey. So yeah, I guess as I'm thinking about it more, it's more frustrating than I had thought about in a while for me. Yeah, a trip to the gas station for batteries, that's a great way of putting it. Wait, okay, so Chrissy, the big question in clarifying your last message is, are you saying that the durability system is unacceptable to you, or it's unacceptable to you that your friend stopped playing because of the durability system? Because there's a big difference in those two things. Totally misremembered, by the way, if you were keeping score of the method we were supposed to use to get over to that cave, but we figured it out. The muscle memory helps. There we go. Oh, so that's funny. Again, I'm so trained from other games now, like Breath of the Wild, that I assumed the world was designed in such a way that it was just wanting you to go behind the waterfall and just get the wind flows in such a position that it naturally dropped you there. Whereas with this world, it's not so much in a place where you can go behind the waterfall, but where you're going directly into the waterfall and therefore it can't get into the cave unless the waterfall is diverted. Kind of an unusual twist on the secrets behind a waterfall mechanic in video games. Or trope, I should say, not a mechanic. Come on. You thought you'd get away without a boss fight? Alright, but so... And like, Chrissy, I take your point, and that's fair, but I think it depends on the kind of exploration that you enjoy as a player too, right? Because like, I'll say, like, I did get the sense that in Breath of the Wild they were trying to make exploration feel really realistic. Like, so much of it is about survivalism, right? And trying to figure out how to, like, literally just survive and sustain yourself in the world when there's not a lot of infrastructure for that, because the infrastructure fell apart a century ago, right? So I get what they were trying to do, but as a player, like, I won't say I didn't love it. This is not an Aaron hates Breath of the Wild argument, so don't go tweeting that out or anything like that, because I have a lot of love for the game. But I think in terms of how I love to explore and think about worlds, especially when the world of Breath of the Wild is so, like, cozy and fun to live in, like, having to deal with the mental overhead of things like inventory management and cooking and, you know, food and potions and weapons that are going to break, like, that did take a little bit of the magic out of it for me. Not so much that I would put the game down, but I can see why that would be something that would, you know, be stressful for a player who is looking for just that kind of pure, like, joyful fantasy exploration. Yeah, I think that's another way of putting it too, where, like, I kind of have that same feeling where, like, there might have been a path to something that was, like, creating the same kind of world they were creating and getting the same points across that they were trying to with the story and what it feels like to be in that world, with just, like, maybe a little better quality of life. Yeah, I'm actually... So, okay, I'm talking before the battle because I know from being told that my audio doesn't come through great right now over the battle, so I want to just have this conversation first. But it's funny as we're thinking more about this, because I'm actually flashing back to memories of my own about, like, weapon durability anxiety, where I wouldn't even know, like, well, will a weapon last through this battle, and so should I use it in the battle? I have an electric car, and one of the things that people talk about, which is absolutely true, is range anxiety, where, like, you'll look at the gauge on your car's like battery, and you won't know if you'll be able to make it a certain distance. And that is like such a distinctive and overbearing anxiety. And now that I'm thinking about it, I never drew this comparison before, but I had the exact same thing with a lot of the weapon management in that game, which is like, no, I mean, it got me to think about weapons in games in a different way, so it's memorable in that way, but I did not enjoy it especially either. Yeah, I think even like so two things. Chrissy, I think the thing you missed was just like what I was saying was, especially with Link becoming a hero and acquiring the Master Sword, there's a sense in which I see the Master Sword as this immutable object of, pure heroism that is demonstrative of the hero having reached a certain point in his journey where he can take on any kind of evil. And so for that to have durability associated with it, where it can't just be everlasting, felt very antithetical to Zelda's particular version of the Excalibur myth. So that was to answer your question. But yeah, I think a repair system, to your point, the Seaweed Brain 09, which is a great handle, by the way, I think that would have helped. But I also think even, like, here's a toy example. It's not quite repair, but an upgrade system for weapons where, like, yeah, weapons have a durability bar or whatever, but as you go through the world and acquire all the different materials you can acquire, you can, like, make an effort to get rare materials that upgrade those weapons and make them stronger and make them more durable. And then, like, at the top tier of the upgrades, then they just have infinite durability and they become, like, real weapons that you can keep forever. To me, at least, that would have had a lot of the same impact that I got from the broader overworld of Breath of the Wild and what it means to, create things and be responsible for your own survival in it. But it also would have made the quality of life in terms of just navigating the world with your weapons much improved. Let's kill a plant, though, because we got a girl to save.
We must be merciful. Don't get in my way. Ready? Spirit seal. Spirit seal. Annoying.
Let's try summoning Luna and Asuka. We haven't done that one yet. I think they both show up in the summon.
I call upon the light of the heavens. Help is on the way. I summon thee. Come, Luna. Light devastation.
I don't think a single one of her rays hit the plant. And Asuka didn't show up, so I feel doubly cheated. Yeah, but like, shouldn't you have a hate boner for plants? Or like just a healthy fear of them? Like, man, I remember, so for a while in college, I thought I was pre-med, right? So I took like one too many biology courses, among other things. And when I learned about like the life cycle of plants and the way they reproduce and how like radically different they are than other life forms, like I was a little terrified, to say nothing of the different ways in which they can propagate. And like, I mean, I know we're all living in a post The Last of Us TV show world now, so don't even have to say anything about how scary fungi are, right? So I think like of all the things to make monstrous in a JRPG, plants are probably one of the more logical ones to me. Yeah, that's kind of okay. I feel like that's being generous to Breath of the Wild, Chrissy, but I get where you're coming from. And it is an interesting thought of like, how can it being a limited resource encourage you to like better recognize what it stands for and honors that? So I can, it's a good point. I can see my way into buying that. I mean, it's scary how much of that like endgame scenario of Apocalypse was based on scientific fact of fungi, as I understand it, or at least as I remember my schooling on it. So I don't totally blame your GF for thinking that. Something's got to ruin the world one of these days, right? Why not a giant mind-controlling fungus network? Ugh. But it won't be this plant. We will see to it here and now that it's not this plant. Why can't I make the unison attacks land?
Healing circle! Serpent seal! Infliction! Run! Serpent seal! Pinion! Ready? Acuteness! Infliction!
That's right.
Help is on the way. Healing circle!
Yeah, that's actually the seventh seal for unlocking the doors to hell, right? And then Satan just comes and ruins everyone. And that's the real Half-Life 3. One of those live-action games.
Serpent seal! Pinion! Help is on the way. Healing circle!
He's the hero we need, not the hero we deserve.
Serpent seal! Ready? Fire seal! Healing circle! Devastation! Fire! Run! Serpent seal! Pinion! Acuteness! Run! Serpent seal! Pinion! Ready? Field barrier! Serpent! That's that!
Not today, plant menace. Consider that weed whacked. And that's my one bad dad joke for this stream. Hope you enjoyed it. Oh, I don't know if I saw that one. That almost makes me want to rewatch it, though. That was actually going back to the theme we were talking about earlier in this stream. That was like a show that I started watching with a former paramour, and then when we split up, I didn't keep going with it, which was a tragedy because Mads Mikkelsen, oh my god, I still remember that brother's performance in that. So I do really want to revisit it at some point. It's just, oh, you say things like that. It's like, oh, I should revisit it, but also, oh, I really got to brace myself before I go back to something like that. I like this too because, again, with JRPGs, so often, like, you know, their stories are so long, they drop so much information on you, it's easy to think it's just like narrative overload and they throw everything in your face, but think about a subtle moment like this, right? We got the mana leaf herb, and the thing that was guarding it was, like we said, this monstrous plant that's out of control, right? And if we think about this herb as something that has a connection or receptivity to the mana of the world, then it only makes sense, like we saw with the Great Seed going out of control, that the, you know, disturbance in the mana would actually bring about this big monster. So there's a whole explanation for like the logic of why that particular monster is there, but the game throws next to nothing of that in your face. I love its little moments like that. Yeah, the bad dad jokes are the sixth seal that opens the gate to hell, right before the fungus ends it all. No, Half-Life 3. We're riffing on Half-Life 3, not the fungus. It's all connected. Yeah, enough said, right? Okay, now we beat the boss, so I can feel a little more confident in asking you to brace yourselves for some really great reveals and setting up of the next stage of the story. And now he's gonna send us on another quest first. Nah, I'm playing. What's your personal gripe? Oh, you sent your message already? Transition between what part? Like literally just the end screen of the battle where you see the results. Like you wish there was more of a transition into that. Oh yeah, I see what you mean. I will say I feel like some games do more thoughtful things with that. Some of the Tales games, I mean, especially in some of their pivotal battles, like even Tales of the Abyss. I was because I think I said I'm working on a piece studying that right now, and so I was rewatching some of its battles, and especially like some of the final big confrontations. They like intersplice dialogue, and it's much more dynamic in terms of the relationship between gameplay and story. But you're right, a lot of times it can feel like it sort of jolts back to a sort of arcadey thing where, well, like it says at the end screen, you're getting a grade on the battle, right? So it ends up feeling much more performative in the moment than bringing you into the story. I think that's fair. Yeah, what are the universal crushes in JRPGs? Do we have any? I guess Sephiroth, right? It's got to be one. I guess everyone in that particular interesting, let's say, corner of the Xenoblade Chronicles world is fawning over grown-up Rex in the trailers for the new DLC. I guess fandoms love to have their crushes on people, right? Yeah, Tifa, for sure, for sure. Well, and especially with Remake now, the whole battle between fans of if they're Team Tifa or Aerith and all that. Which strikes me as silly. For good narrative reasons, not just for the fandom of it all. But to each their own. That's what Colette is to me. I'm defining the relationship with complete lack of ambiguity so that it never comes up again. She is our very important friend. Lloyd, that's not unambiguous at all. Yeah, okay, I'm loving this. No, keep it coming. This is edifying in a weird way. It's funny you say that about Lulu. Like, I felt that way, but about Yuna. She, like, stirred that part of my young adolescent mind much more than Lulu for whatever reason. But, I mean, both bombshells, let's be honest. Okay, the music stopped, so if I didn't tell you enough to pay attention, like, the game is now telling you, so you've been warned. We're gonna finally learn about Mythos. Legend of Dragoon, that's on my list. My friend and colleague Dan wrote a really thoughtful article about The Legend of Dragoon years ago, and so I've been meaning to play it forever, but now that it's on PSN or wherever they ported it, I really have no excuse. Really interesting character type that I think is not a cliche. The storyteller who has, like, imposed exile on himself in order to, like, retain the autonomy necessary to tell stories. Really interesting thing to do within a story like Tales of Symphonia. I love this too, because talk about getting the pacing right for bringing you into the world and helping you really to understand it in context. Like, we are, what, maybe 35 hours into this game now? And we are only now learning, like, the true story of Mythos and who this legendary figure was at all. Wow, no kidding. That certainly sounds formative. Okay, that is reason for me to play Final Fantasy Tactics. That's one that I always kind of passed over. But yeah, basically anytime you get a thoughtful story, really in any medium, but I mean, I love video games, so like anytime you can find a storyteller or a narrator in a video game, usually something really cool is going on, worth thinking about. So Mythos was cast out at the beginning of his journey, not unlike we were cast out of Azalea at the beginning of our journey. And he was a half-elf, born in Heimdall. Wow, say no more, I am in. Maybe I'll even stream it just for you, so you can experience it for the first time again, vicariously at least. Oh, I'm sorry your stream is lagging. I hope it's not on my end. I don't really have many levers in this setup that I can pull to adjust things, but hopefully on Wednesday I'll be able to fine-tune things to make sure that I'm at least doing what I can to keep lag out of it. Mythos is a fallen hero, and now we have a new name in the mix, Origin. Mythos betrayed Origin and used his sword to divide the world. So the real question is, who saw that coming? And I will tell you, no matter how many times I played this as a kid, little Aaron never did. This was really like one of the twists and unfolding of a story by which I still to this day like set the bar of thoughtful narrative twists in stories that depend on them. They changed the nature of the world. I have heard that of its reputation, which is kind of tempting to me and also kind of very daunting. So that guy who descended in the Tower of Salvation way back when and brutalized the party, and if you might remember, channeled a magic sword inside the Tower of Salvation too, is Yggdrasil, and is also Mythos. First name, last name. Yeah, like Fire Emblem, right? That kind of thing. That is, yeah, pretty daunting, especially as a kid. That sound familiar? Little like what happened to Presea, halting her internal clock. Oh wow, yeah, that sounds pretty brutal. But I feel like you always got to go into a first playthrough blind. It just it changed my experience too much to be like following something from the start, like a guide. I mean. That rare moment when Genus and Zealous are on the exact same wavelength. No, are you kidding me? I mean, I can walk and chew gum at the same time, especially when the walking path and flavor of gum are both great JRPG stories. Did I do that analogy right? That was a little tortured, but... No, you are certainly not distracting from anything in my book. Just adding. The best part of these stories are the conversations that you get between the gamers who've played them and the other games with which they resonate. So we learned a lot about Mythos and Yggdrasil, and Kratos and Ewan and Martel, who appears not just to be a goddess, but actually someone who was the companion of these others, who have lived for 4,000 years, sounds like. I love the party's commitment still to very simply, as the final goal, as Rain said, wanting to find a way to save the two worlds. Although it is interesting, we should keep in mind as we're keeping track of what we are and aren't learning about the worlds. Now we know that Yggdrasil split the world, we still don't really know why he did that. So that's a missing piece of the puzzle. But it's not going to stop the party from doing what they think is the best way to save the world. They didn't know what the ramifications would be of severing ties of mana between the world, and they did that even though it caused the Great Seed to go out of control. And they just keep following their moral compass. There's something similarly kind of daunting yet admirable about that, I think. Professor Rain, please. I'm a very bad student, but really good with swords. Thank God they let us quick jump to the beginning of this debacle. If I never see another of those plants again, it'll be too soon. I swear to God. Alright, to the Abbey. Is this the Abbey? No, it's House of Gardens. I think... I move my overlay for a sec, because I think it's on this continent. Yeah. Oh boy, that's another reason I'm excited to upgrade the stream for y'all soon. I think it'll be easier to manage my ability to actually navigate in the world versus managing the overlays that the PS5 graciously builds into its systems, which are useful for plug-and-play streaming for those of us who have never done it before, but a little hard for actually seeing where you're going sometimes. It's a good question. I think it's like if you've got more than like 40 years between them, it's creepy, but if you're reasonably within like 10 years of their age, it's acceptable. So also, I was talking about this at the very beginning of the stream, but I like don't remember, and I haven't picked up in the game how old Genus and Rain actually are in terms of just raw years, because they're half-elves, right? And so I think their lifespan is supposed to be different, and so they could potentially like look the same age but be maybe significantly older than the other members of the party. And I'm sure, I mean, the Tales games are the kind of games that will certainly have a canonical answer to that. I don't remember it off the top of my head, and the game hasn't told me. Alright, I'll move the overlay back now. Is this door not working? There we go. Boy, Sheena absolutely ninja sprinted up that staircase.
Big bro... I mean, I see that the Chosen is his usual self, wandering around aimlessly.
Yo, Celeste. I need that Crucis crystal I left with you. Give it back to me.
As you wish. After all, it rightfully belongs to the Chosen.
Yep.
Now, if your business here is done, I humbly request that you leave. Immediately.
Yeah, of course. That is tried and true.
Guess I'm as unpopular as ever. Poor me.
Oh, wait, Big Bro...
What is it, my darling little sister?
Nothing.
Oh, alright then.
Man, I feel like I just heard the Sisters VA
Please
somewhere else.
take
It's gonna
care.
bug me. Probably either voicing another character here or in Tales of the Abyss, because they reuse fabulous voice actors across these games all the time, and I love it.
He couldn't hear that, you know.
I didn't say anything, so it doesn't matter if my big brother couldn't hear it.
Aha! You called him Big Brother.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for hanging out. I hope you enjoyed it, and definitely hope to see you back. It was really great chatting with you. I got as much out of your comments as I've gotten out of the stream and the story of Symphonia so far, so hope to see you back. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. Glad you enjoyed it.
No, I didn't. There's no way I'd have a brother like that. Now, please leave.
Well, what do you think? I'm well loved, aren't I?
She's certainly not very friendly.
Don't be too hard on her. She was sickly ever since she was a kid. But despite that, her mother... never mind.
As you left, she said, please take care.
Oh. Well, anyway. We're ready now, right? On to the Tower of Salvation.
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna say we're good enough on items. Let's just go for it. When's the last time that ever steered us wrong? That'll be fine. To the tower. Though, I don't know, it would be nice to rest at an inn at least. Regenerate the party. Yeah, let's stop in Altamira. It's somewhat on the way. Nice to have a little seaside vacation before going to the center of the world, to the enemy's main base, to try to save our friend. Our very important friend. As long as we're here, we might as well stock up on items. That was my plan all along. I was just messing with you the first time. It's just nice to have the cushion. And away we go. Hop, skip, and a jump. Man, remember, what, probably 20 hours ago? We got to one of these for the first time. And it felt to little child Aaron in his youth that he was reaching the end of the game. Remember that? How the times and context have changed. But we're still trying to save the world. Just on our own terms now.
Coming here reminds me of my journey to regenerate the world.
But this time, we're here to cure your illness.
I'm curious to see what the design of Tethe'alla's Tower of Salvation is like.
I was thinking about that too. It's a nice anti-parallel where, you know, Colette first goes on this journey of regeneration, like giving up her own existence in order to try to save the world, and then the party goes on this separate journey culminating at the Tower of Salvation in order to save Colette rather than sacrifice her. I think that's a really touching way of showing growth in the story.
Now, Zelos, open the door, quickly.
You know, you can get really scary sometimes. Oh, yeah! Check me out! It's my time to shine! Do I look like a chosen or what?
Yeah. Let's get going.
Roger.
That's a very disturbing laugh.
Yeah, I was a little rattled by that too.
Zelos, is something wrong?
What?
You're even more...
Even more obnoxious than usual? Nah, he's always like this. Just ignore him.
She's pretty sharp.
Ugh. Do you have chills? Do you have shivers? Are you worried? All three of those were true for me as a kid. And even knowing where this is going now, I still feel all of that as if I'd forgotten it now as an adult. There's that hanging chat of the bodies and sarcophagi. Still want a good answer to that.
Ghastly.
Such a sad place.
Wait a minute. Is this really Tethe'alla?
Yeah. It looks identical to Sylvarant's Tower of Salvation. My body... I can't stop shaking. This is the same place.
It can't be.
Lloyd, remember this?
That's... Wait, I broke that.
The two worlds are connected here.
Of course, it's the same place.
Oh no, he has his cool Crucius outfit on now.
Kratos, it's you again. Who are you really? Are you really one of Mythos' companions from 4,000 years ago?
Good. Since you figured that out, it saves me the time to explain. We will take the Chosen as the new body for Martel.
You're still trying to do that? Are you so intent on resurrecting Martel that you're willing to distort the entire world in the process?
I have no need to explain.
So in the end, you really are our enemy. I kept thinking, hoping that you might be good, but you're not.
I should think that would be obvious at this point.
Don't hold back this time.
I hope you improved. Take this! Judgment!
I still prefer the "you earnestly believe you can defeat me," but that's a pretty good starting gambit too. Boy, he's not holding back.
Ready?
Oh, I meant to change the summon. Oh, it's too late.
Light of the heavens. I summon thee. Come, Luna. Light. Serpent Sea opinion.
I have Super Lightning Blade!
Help is on the way. Healing circle. Serpent. Fire seal.
Super Lightning Blade! Demon Super Lightning Blade!
Jesus.
Super Lightning Blade!
Here.
This guy's the divine lord of combos.
Serpent. Spear fire.
Lightning Blade! Super Lightning Blade!
Infliction. Serpent is on the fire seal. Healing circle.
Fierce Demon! Super Lightning Blade!
Serpent. Fire seal. Here. Are you okay?
Super Lightning Blade!
Serpent. Devastate. Fire seal. Dynamic. Ready? Field barrier. Are you all ready? Infliction. Photon. Try this. Mirage. Infliction. Cuteness.
Super Lightning!
Boy's pretty tanky for being a Magic Knight.
Super Lightning!
Funny, he was never this tanky when he was in our party. Almost as if he was holding back.
Devastate. Spirit.
Lightning Blade! Super Lightning!
The Tales games honestly do, though, in my mind, do a pretty good job of explaining, like, the reasons why it's the case sometimes that some characters in your party who should be much stronger than your party's level are leveled down to them in one way or another. Like, I do think a good explanation in this game is that, like, Kratos was holding back almost to conceal his identity back when he was participating with the party.
Lightning Blade!
And then in Tales of the Abyss, you get something cool like one of the characters, Jade, is, like, within the context of the story, way overpowered when the party first encounters him. And then one of the enemies very quickly, like, uses this magic device to seal away Jade's powers, so he gets effectively leveled down to where they all are. It always makes it easier for me to buy into the overall ecosystem of the game's storytelling when they have those sorts of explanations for the actual, like, capacity of characters relative to each other in a party-based game like this, I mean.
Be careful.
This battle track is such a, like, manic reimagining of Kratos' leitmotif, too. It really feels like we're being tested by him.
Take this! Judgment!
That's not good.
Demon Spear!
Help is on the way. Healing circle.
Fierce Demon!
Spirit fire.
That was a lucky break.
Fierce Demon! Super Lightning Blade!
Are you okay? Fire.
Lightning Blade!
It's like he had 5 DPS against him. Crazy. He's acting as an agent of Crucius and casting light spells like Judgment. I wonder whether we'll deal more damage if we whack him with Shadow. Let's try it. Double over limit! OL versus OL.
Judgment! Healing circle! I summon thee! Come, Shadow!
That did seem pretty effective. Better than Luna at least. What a letdown. Give me Asuka.
Double demon
Help! Beast! Way! Healing circle!
Super lightning blade!
Guardian seal! Rush! Fire seal! Here, be careful!
Double demon fatigue! Super lightning blade!
Here,
Take this! Judgment!
Nurse!
Jesus Christ, dude. I almost want to pop them all to vote.
Here, be
Super
careful!
lightning blade!
Here, be careful!
Super lightning blade!
I'm not getting any awards for not spamming items, but
Super lightning blade!
any port in the storm.
Lightning blade! Demon spear!
Serpent seal! Fire seal!
Lightning blade! Demon spear!
Nurse! Rush! Serpent seal!
Blade! Super lightning blade!
Rush! Fire seal! Help is on the way! Healing circle!
Super lightning blade!
Are you all ready? Photon! Here I go! Mirage! Infliction!
Oh, I was gonna say, that's cool, we negated his over limit, but really we just pushed it to right after our unison attack.
Here!
Demon spear!
Rush! Serpent seal! Pinion!
Not again!
Super lightning blade!
Ready? Healing circle!
Lightning blade! Super lightning blade!
Rush! Serpent seal! Pinion!
Fierce demon spear!
Help is on the way! Healing circle! Rush! Fire seal! Rush! Fire seal!
Fierce demon fang!
Help is on the way! Healing circle!
Fierce demon! Super lightning
Might be able to finish him with a summon. That'd be pretty sweet.
I've summoned thee. Come,
Did we time it right? Did we time it right? Awesome.
That was great.
That was great. And see, that's almost... Those are the moments in Tales battles that are kind of the antithesis of what we were talking about earlier, where yes, there can be big tonal shifts between the boss fight and then the reward screen, but when you're able to tie off a boss fight with a particular flourish that feels narratively meaningful, like casting a summon or using a particular character to beat one that they have a grudge in the narrative or something like that, it can really add a whole other layer to both the gameplay and the story at that point. I feel like the Tales games have a special magic to them in that regard.
I would advise against resisting, for there will be no mercy this time.
I guess he was holding back after all, since he seems completely unfazed by that battle. Whereas I'm still catching my
still
breath.
alive?
Well, looks like we'll have our lives at least until they finish preparing Colette's treatment. Apparently she's useless the way she is now.
Maybe we were tricked. He had us gather the materials to treat Colette, and then had us bring her here. That sure saved them a lot of time and effort.
Kratos used us? Did he betray us again?
Lloyd,
I feel guilty for letting this happen to Colette and the others.
I really want to know why I keep getting captured and getting thrown into jail all the time.
It's a good question, Lloyd. It's a good question.
you sure you haven't been doing anything to deserve it?
We should just be glad we have our lives.
Well, yeah. Damn it! This thing's built solid as a rock, and I can't open the lock either.
Same here. It won't budge at all.
Can Colette or Persea break it?
Nope. I'm sorry I couldn't be of use.
So we're completely trapped.
Move.
Whoa!
Just, come on, how awesome is that? To see the full magnitude of this man that he's bound up just in order to atone for his sins, because that's how strong his moral fiber is, let alone his physical capacity to wreak havoc on the world.
How did you do that?
I originally specialized in fighting with my hands, not my feet.
I was extremely good.
And since X-spheres amplify their users' abilities far above their maximum limits, this result is to be expected.
Another case of someone who should be much stronger than they are in the party, but with a narrative explanation of why they're the case, where Regal de-skills himself to the point of being on a par with everyone else by using his feet instead of his hands. Amazing.
Then why don't you just fight with your hands?
I swore I would never fight with these hands again. This time, I used them in order to save you, Lloyd. You're going to unite the worlds and save Colette, right?
Yeah, that's right. All right. Everybody grab what you can and let's get out of here.
All right. Deep in the Tower of Salvation, I think is where we still are. Yeah, that's definitely where we are. Well, off on another journey to save Colette and to save the party in general, this time from pretty much all of Crucius and Kratos. So we've traveled the world, we've learned about the history of the world, now we find ourselves deep in enemy territory, and chances are we're gonna uncover a lot about what it takes to actually unite the worlds next time. So I think, rather than diving deep into the next area, that'll be a good place to call it for the evening. I want to thank you so much for continuing on this journey through Tales of Symphonia and Tales of Praxis with me. I hope you've enjoyed it. We're going to be back same time, 7 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday. Hopefully, as promised, with a much more sophisticated streaming setup for your viewing and engagement pleasure. So look forward to that, if I can figure it out, technically speaking. But all the stuff will be here for it, at least. So thank you, truly. I hope you're enjoying this. It's been the most fun I've had with a JRPG game in a long time, to be able to share it with you all in this interactive way that we've been doing, especially on this stream. I think a lot of the conversation was really rewarding for me, so I want to thank you for that. I hope to see you back here on Wednesday, and look for that article that I am insisting will be out on Tales of Abyss later this week. It'll take some time, but I'm going to get it off my plate, and we could talk about why it was such an effort once it's out, but I hope that you'll enjoy that too. This has been Tales of Praxis, and I'll see you again in just a couple days. Game on.